أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
I seek refuge from Satan, the rejected one.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful.
واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا.
Relate in the book the story of Mary when she withdrew from her family to a place in the east.
فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا.
She placed a screen to screen herself from them. Then we sent to her our angel, and he appeared before her as a man in all respects.
قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا.
She said, I seek refuge from you to Allah, most gracious. Come not near if you do fear Allah.
قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا.
He said, Nay, I am only a messenger from your Lord to announce to you the gift of a holy son.
قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا.
She said, How shall I have a son, seeing that no man has touched me, and I am not unchaste?
قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منا وكان أمرا مقضيا.
He said, So it will be. Your Lord says, That is easy for me, and we wish to appoint him as a sign unto men and a mercy from us. It is a matter so decreed.
فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا.
So she conceived him, and she retired with him to a remote place.
فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا.
And the pains of childbirth drove her to the trunk of a palm tree. She cried in her anguish, Ah, would that I had died before this. Would that I had been a thing forgotten and out of sight.
فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا.
But a voice cried to her from beneath the palm tree, Grieve not, for your Lord has provided a rivulet beneath you.
وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا.
And shake towards yourself the trunk of the palm tree. It will let fall fresh ripe dates upon you.
فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا.
So eat and drink, and cool your eye, and if you do see any man, say, I have vowed a fast to Allah most gracious, and this day will I enter into no talk with any human being.
فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا.
At length she brought the babe to her people, carrying him in her arms. They said, O Mary, truly an amazing thing have you brought.
يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا.
O sister of Aaron, your father was not a man of evil, nor your mother a woman unchaste.
فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا.
But she pointed to the babe. They said, how can we talk to one who is a child in the cradle?
قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا.
He said, I am indeed a servant of Allah. He has given me revelation and made me a prophet.
وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا.
And he has made me blessed wheresoever I be, and has enjoined on me prayer and charity as long as I live.
وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا.
He has made me kind to my mother and not overbearing or miserable.
والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا.
So peace is on me the day I was born, the day that I die, and the day that I shall be raised up to life again.
ذلك عيسى ابن مريم قول الحق الذي فيه يمترون.
Such was Jesus, the son of Mary. It is a statement of truth about which they vainly dispute.
ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد سبحانه إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون.
It is not befitting to the majesty of Allah that he should beget a son. Glory be to him. When he determines a matter, he only says to it, be, and it is.
وإن الله ربي وربكم فاعبدوه هذا صراط مستقيم.
Verily, Allah is my Lord and your Lord. Him therefore serve you. This is a way that is straight.